Hello and welcome to our Palm Sunday reflection or sermon, however you wish to think about it. The theme for today is extravagant giving. And I would like us to look at that through 3 points, really, as a good Methodist minister. Firstly, I want us to think about celebrating their freedom to be generous. And then I want us to look at the Lord needs it. And finally, the cost of Jesus' extravagant giving. So firstly, celebrating their freedom to be generous. In our reading from Mark's Gospel, the people were celebrating their freedom to be generous. And so I wonder, how does that look when we think about our theme for today, which is extravagant giving? I wonder then, what are your first thoughts when you hear the words extravagant giving? Do you think about expensive gifts, like a Rolex or a Porsche car? Maybe a luxury holiday or a big house would be something you consider extravagant giving. But maybe extravagant giving is giving someone your last Rolo. Or maybe the gift of time could be considered extravagant giving. You see, I guess our understanding of extravagant giving depends on our personal circumstances and our own values. For a small child to give you their last sweetie is certainly extravagant giving, isn't it? And what about someone who works full-time, has a family to look after, and then calls at their neighbours, takes them some shopping and checks in on them? Isn't that extravagant giving? When we listen to that familiar reading from Mark's Gospel, I wonder, have we really given much thought to the cost of actually laying those cloaks down on the ground? Or has our attention been more on Jesus riding a donkey? And the significance of that triumphant entry into Jerusalem, that we haven't really given much thought to the act of laying a much needed and possibly the only cloak they owned down on the ground, where the chances of it being trampled on are relatively high. If Jesus were to come into our towns on a donkey, how would we feel about throwing down our best suit or that expensive dress we bought for a family wedding? How do we feel about throwing that down on the ground and watching as they got trampled on, leaving them unwearable? Would we even take the most expensive item of clothing out of our wardrobe and throw it on the floor? Or would we look for something old and tired and use that instead? Would we show extravagant giving, or would we give our leftovers? Those throwing their cloaks down were rejoicing at God's deliverance and are responding extravagantly. Although under foreign occupation, they were celebrating their freedom to be generous. Do we celebrate our freedom to be generous by giving our leftovers? Do we even realise the difference between the things we think we need over what we actually really need to have a good life? Do we make sure that our barns are full and give what's left to God and to others? The cloaks were laid on the floor on the road. They were trampled on and they were ruined. But you know, they had greater value than the coats we wear today. And unlike us with our so many coats, in the New Testament times, many just owned the one cloak. So it was a very treasured and much needed item. The palm branches had value too. When Jesus entered Jerusalem, the trees were in bloom. So in covering the way with palm branches, the people were offering a symbol of great value and luxury. Like the cloaks, The palm branches were given up in the excitement of celebrating Jesus. They were most extravagant gestures. And so I wonder, what is this impact of being extravagant givers? What are the risks of extravagant giving? And why do it at all? Well, that brings us to our next point. The Lord needs it. In our reading from Mark's Gospel, verse 3, Jesus says to the disciples, "If anyone asks you why you are doing this, tell him, the Lord needs it." The message concerning the colt is not directed specifically to the owner, but to anyone who might question the disciples' action. Two things for us to ponder on here. Firstly, I wonder, how often have we as disciples been asked that same question? Why are you doing this? And secondly, what is our response when God says to us, the Lord needs it? Let us think for a moment why we do what we do. Why do we make the lifestyle choices we make? Could the world really be a better place if we were all extravagant with our giving? Or what if all Christians followed the biblical tradition of tithing? What would the impact on our churches and our outreach be if all Christians tithed first and trusted God with what was left? What would our local mission and outreach look like if everyone who attended worship on a Sunday also gave a morning, an afternoon or an evening a week to helping others, be that through a local church community group, helping at a local women's refuge or a food bank, or perhaps offering to take on a role in church so as to reduce the load for others? What if we reverse the question? So think for a moment that God is asking us, why are you doing this? Not to seek the answer for our good deeds, but rather questioning our action, and so as to disturb us in our lack of generous giving. What if God is saying to us, why are you doing this? Because we're not tithing or not getting involved with church life like we should. Why are you too busy to help others? Why do we make our own home comforts and luxuries a priority over feeding the homeless? Think for a moment. What would the impact be on our local churches if we were more extravagant with our time and our finances? How could we help the local community if we were more extravagant with our time and our finances? Is God saying to us, why are you doing this? Because he sees the people of God no longer making God or Jesus a priority in their lives? We should be extravagant givers because the Lord needs it. The Lord needs our time and our finances in order to build his kingdom here on earth, to feed the poor, to help the broken and the lost. He needs our help, his purpose to fulfill. When God asks us, why are you doing this? It should be asked to us out of a joy at our generosity. There is really only one answer for us here, and that is, I'm doing this because I'm following the way of Jesus. And that brings me very nicely to our third and final point, the cost of Jesus' extravagant giving. As disciples, we are called to follow the way of Jesus. Jesus laid down a lot more than an expensive gift and a much needed cloak. Jesus' extravagant giving was the giving of his life. 1 John 3:16. This is how we know what love is. Jesus laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and sisters. Philippians 2 verses 3 to 4. Do nothing out of rivalry or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Let each of us look not only to his own interests, but also to the interest of others. On Palm Sunday, we see humility in action. Jesus didn't storm Jerusalem with an army riding in on stallions in a bid to take over the city. No, he rode in on a donkey, teaching us the need for us to be humble. Our reading from Psalm 118 today reminds us to give thanks to God, to thank God for all that he has done for us, for his love that endures forever, to give thanks for all that we have been blessed with. Our freedom to worship God whenever or wherever we want. Our freedom to share his good works with others. Our freedom to be extravagant givers with all the things that God has given to us. If it wasn't for Jesus' generous giving, by the laying down of his life, we wouldn't have the freedom that we have. And so, like Jesus, as we head towards the cross of Good Friday and reflect on the real price, the real cost for Jesus, please let us ponder on the gift of life so freely given, and let us look God in the eye as he questions our actions by asking, why are you doing this? May this question stir up in us a new and a generous heart. May it cause us to rethink the question in line with our own giving, be that of our time or our finances, and the knowledge that the Lord needs our generous giving in order to continue to build his kingdom here on earth. We might feel that being extravagant with our giving will leave us short of a few regular luxuries. But let me ask you, why is it okay for us to have lots of extras and treats and luxuries when others don't even have life's basics? What will your answer be when Jesus says to you, why are you doing this? Amen. Stay safe and be blessed.